Welcome to the Leadership Table, where real conversations meet transformational leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Kevin Hairston, and today we are honored to welcome a true public servant, a man of faith, vision, and action, Senator Herschel Craig of the great state of Ohio. Senator Craig has been a fierce advocate for education, equity, workforce development, and the well being of all Ohioans. Senator Craig, welcome to the Leadership Table.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harrison. What a privilege it is to be with you this morning. Let me also say parenthetically how much I appreciate your leadership and your vision. And so to have the opportunity to talk on this subject to me is such a great privilege.
Let me ask you this, Senator. For those of us who are in Ohio, we're familiar with your leadership, but even those who may not be familiar, what was your journey like in terms of that introduced you to public service? I mean, what made you kind of take that leap of faith to say this is something that I feel important to do?
Listen, I had so many mentors, those that I watched and I followed. I watched my mother, and people always know I'm going to talk about my mother, but I watched her go door to door, uh, you know, uh, asking, soliciting. At that time, it was for cancer. I watched her serve in her church and many others. My Boy Scout leader, Mr. Harrison, a lot of those folks, many of those did not have professional positions, but they were people that served and led. And so that was my impetus in watching them. My pastor, the Reverend B.J. Washington, who literally put the bricks in that church. And when after church, he would take the mothers of the church to dinner. So all of those examples to me, I starting early on as a freshman in college, I campaigned for Robert Kennedy at that time was running for president. I was a gopher. I was those that went around and got coffee and other things for folks. But to be able to observe leadership and watching it certainly on Mount Vernon Avenue. My mother came here very poor. But what she knew about her in that position that she was cleaning houses did not define her. She knew exactly who she was. And so she went on to educate children. She went on to employ seniors, et cetera. But I had watching the landscape of many others, Jerry Hammond and Ben Espy and so many others who had served, and C.J. McGlynn, who served in the legislature, watching and observing them. And then God allowed me, created an opportunity for me. The first thing I wanted to do was serve our children in the school board. I ran for the school board in 1990 and then again in 1998. I was not successful. But what that taught me, you've got to step out because I was watching children, young people, come into this system with very, very serious offenses, aggravated murder, burglary, all of those things, and thought I would try to do something to improve their lives. I'm a first generation college graduate. So for me, you've got to do something rather than just say something.
I think your words of wisdom can help somebody understand your humble beginnings in terms of those people who were influential in your life. And I've seen you on different occasions. You're a person who does not hide your faith. And that becomes admirable, especially at times when we're living in a society maybe where we're dinged because of our faith, or maybe perhaps people feel they have to kind of hide it underneath a bowl because, again, the scrutiny that may take place. How has faith been the forefront of your leadership? And can you share perhaps a moment where your faith helped you in a difficult moment as a leader?
Listen, my faith has been the driving force because all of us, none of us are perfect. There have been challenges in my life, and some of which I created that I had to be contrite and ask God for forgiveness. So for all of us, and especially in this work, when we're dealing with very complicated issues, our mission ought to always be serving those that are most vulnerable, those that are on the margins. I've been unemployed. I've stood in unemployment lines. I've been homeless, you know, in some choices and some things in my life. And so all of those things, certainly watching those young people in the Department of Youth Services, but just growing up, because a lot of my friends, and when I came, I served in the military, where I saw folks that were caught up in this terrible ring around substance abuse, where you see people struggling in their lives. And so, what government does is, or what we should be doing, is creating an atmosphere that creates equity and opportunity for all families, no matter what your zip code is. And so, throughout my life, and certainly it informs my position in the legislature, to make sure that we're doing everything with justice, with fairness, and with equity. And that's my core principles. And certainly those are the principles as I'm being informed in my faith, to make sure that we're serving for the least of these, those that need our help and our assistance.
Let me ask you this. You represent communities that are facing real challenges, from education disparities to economic inequality. What do you see are some of the biggest needs right now in the Columbus area, and maybe perhaps even in the area in which you serve?
Well, certainly, as you know, Dr. Harrison, I live in the Central City. Mm-hmm. I still live. You don't have to do that to serve, but I live there. And so this issue around access to affordable housing is real. We had this perfect storm in the city of Columbus. At the same time that we had the property taxes to elevate exponentially. It was the same time we had this issue with our school funding our children and our young people. It was a very, very difficult decision. I've never voted against the school levy and did not then. But I had to also be concerned about our seniors. We literally got calls where our seniors were crying because they were concerned about losing their homes. That still weighs heavily on my heart and my mind. And that's something that we have to do as a state, to make sure that all of our families are able to stay in their homes if they choose to do that. These are many folks that have retired, played by the rules. So certainly housing is a critical issue, education for all of our children, making sure that they get the critical educational tools and resources that they need. Making sure that jobs and opportunity, whether it's Intel or it's Google or wherever they're going, whatever their destiny in life, that they have the critical tools. So education, healthcare is vital for all of our citizens. All of those things are paramount and critical, and things that we've introduced bills to make sure. And also, we were very, very fortunate. I wanted a freestanding dental clinic in the district. It took me 5 years, but we cut the ribbon on that dental clinic, where right now they've been able to get about $2.3 million long after I'm gone. That dental clinic will be able to serve families and children. We put about $1 million into the African American Extension Center, where young people can take college courses and graduate courses in that center, and the community can meet. I was very fortunate to with a bipartisan bill, to have a cancer bill. My wife had cancer. My mother died of cancer. So there have been a number of other things, but clearly those issues around healthcare, education, workforce, and housing is critical.
Now, you mentioned, even you living in the city, and we both live in the city. We both are passionate about the city of Columbus, passionate about the education of the students, especially in the city schools, Columbus City Schools being about the largest school district in Ohio, and some of the difficulties that they face from a funding perspective. And not too long ago, there was a levy passed, and some say there may even perhaps be a levy in 27, and some of the difficulties that they're experiencing financially may put them in that position. What are your thoughts on how local school districts should be funded, similar to situations that Columbus City Schools are experiencing?
Well, thank you for that question. It's a serious question, one in which we've been, wrestling with, certainly as elected officials, but The Roth decision, almost 3 decades ago, said that the way that we're funding our schools is unconstitutional because it's not to always lie on property taxes. That's an issue we're struggling with right now. We've got to make sure that, you're right about it. The Columbus City Schools is the largest school system in the state of Ohio. We've got to make sure that all of our children, again, have the tools and the resources that they need. So we're looking at the issue. We continue to do that from a legislative, a policy perspective, to make sure that our children are funded properly. Now, there were, with the Cupp-Patterson bill, a bipartisan bill looked at that issue for long-term funding. We've got to do more work on that bill. There are challenges to that bill, but as long as I'm here, we're going to continue to drive those issues to make sure that funding our public education system and education system in its entirety is looked at to make sure that all of our children have the tools and skills they need to be successful.
You were talking a little bit earlier about your faith and just the influence that you've had in terms of some of the people, in terms of your family and your pastor in your life. Where do you see, as you work with a lot of different individuals in the community, especially faith leaders, where do you see that intersection of collaboration could take place? Sometimes, pastors or faith leaders are going, do I have a responsibility to be down at the State House? And then, you yourself as a man of faith. And so you're not a stranger to the house of God. But there are some elected officials, and let's just be honest with you, Senator, that only show up, man, right before the weekend before election Tuesday. And so where do you see the balance of collaboration between elected officials and faith leaders?
Well, another excellent question. Look, in our scripturally, and I'm a minister as well. God is our leader. But what did God ask Moses? Moses, what's that in your hand? And so, from my perspective, I would submit to you, and I'm the associate minister at First Church of God. In fact, the bishop says if you don't vote and you don't participate in political process and voting, don't say that you're a member, because it is so serious that we observe and make certain that we're being connected, because there is a confluence with a real one from our clergy, our faith community, that helps to guide and inform our decisions, and from elected officials. It's vitally important that we are connected. We recognize that, in fact, when every session in the Senate, we have a prayer. We pray. There are committees that I'm a part of, either as the ranking member, and they ask me to pray. Fundamentally, I believe in prayer. But the connection between the church, and you think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was a preacher first, but he recognized the significance of the church and its implication. When we do that, and we make sure that it's fair and it's equity and it's just for all people. And so the church and clergy, I do a lot of work with a lot of pastors. As you know, Dr. Harrison, with Pastor Lamar and the Baptist Pastors Conference and the Ministerial Alliance, and I'm a part of the international clergy. And so, but we work with clergy with our Catholic community, our Jewish community, and Muslim, all of the folk. It's important for us to coalesce in this republic to make sure that we are all involved and we're being held accountable. We're being held accountable for the work that we're doing. And quite frankly, the faith community holds me accountable for my work, and you know that. I mean, when I get endorsement or support, they don't, they can't endorse, but they support, and I go before them. I've got to say to them what I've done, and they hold me accountable, and they should hold me accountable, and other elected officials.
Well, let me switch gears just a little bit. In terms of like mental health continues to be a critical issue. Do you think that the state is doing enough, or there's more that can be done, or maybe perhaps there's things that we don't know that's being done in terms of support of addressing mental health access for youth and adults across our state?
Listen, there's more work that. Let me just say that right off the cuff that we can do and should do as a state regarding this issue of mental health. I think we're moving to the point where it's not a stigma. It affects so many of our lives. My mother's sister has been in the mental health system for 60 years, and it affects all of our families. And I think we in the faith community particularly, if you need to go see a doctor, if we believe our faith and that God creates all, then He created the doctor. Go see the doctor. Get help from those that can provide help. And so we've got to do more. Now, certainly we've helped to secure funding for the Adam Board, some of the other providers. The state does not do the actual work. What we do is find those organizations that are providing the clinical resources and support those. So we've got more work to do in that area. It is a critical issue for all of us. You see more athletes, other folks talking about their journey in terms of mental health. African American Man Walk is coming up here on Saturday. They openly talk about it and try to get us to share in that as men, to talk about that issue openly and clearly, because it is an issue that affects our families and our children. See young people, 13, 14, with this gun violence. We've got to talk about that issue in critical work.
Well, you mentioned two great points that I want to touch on, and by the time this episode is seen, we would have already completed the wellness walk. But from a perspective of the African American male perspective of dealing with mental health, would you agree with me that maybe perhaps this conversation wouldn't even taken place maybe 30 years ago? We wouldn't be talking about mental health, and
not in the way that we're doing it right now. And because you're right, and but we can't hide that in a bushel,
right?
Because it affects our families and it affects all of us. And when you're traumatized, and I watch folk, like I said, coming from the military and what they had seen. I'm a Vietnam era veteran, but those who were coming from Vietnam and what they were seeing. Now, like I said, with this issue with the drugs, with the mental health, with the substance abuse issues, with my daughter, and we've adopted 5 children, and they're Papa's children. Grandchildren, and all of them are coming from situations, but they're all of our families. Many have many challenges, and the stressors and the uncertainty that exists so much right now, but in some of the political process. You need to get help. Let's get help, and make sure that we're openly talking about that so that we can get help. And get the resources that we need.
Senator Craig, one of my Dr. Gilliard, one of my mentors, man, from years ago, and he's gone on to be with the Lord the last 2.5 years. He used to always say, even when I was in his presence, and he used to say that to people he would come in contact with. He used to go, who's in your circle? He would go back to Psalms 1 and talk about wise counsel, and he says, man, a faithful person always has people who they go to, may not go to for everything, but that they can go to and they can talk to, they can share some things, and they can get some advice, but they can also let it out. Who are the heroes in your life? Who's the modern day living heroes in your life?
Well, I look. I live in a neighborhood. The guy that helps me and with repairs on my house, that's one of my heroes. I mean, it's folks that we can talk to. Certainly, the bishop and the church, and in First Church, and the brotherhoods, and we all have to have accountability. I have pastors and folk that I'm accountable to. My wife, my best friend, and folks that you can talk to. I've got children. My grandchildren, my great grandchildren, all of us, my staff, they hold me accountable. I mean, we need folk that we can talk to and not feel threatened, but folks that can challenge us and say, "Look, you need to you kind of messing up here. You need to, not go that way." And we all need that. We know who our Heavenly Father is, but He has given us, and we call it our spirit, and we have a spirit, but we also have find a human person that you can converse with. You can tell them stuff, and they won't tell other folk all your business. But we need to have, all of us need somebody that we can hang out with.
That's right.
I'm 76 and trying to get to 77. So I want to, we all need somebody that we have friends, and I thank God. I've had some folk that I've known for nearly 60 years, and we're still friends. And so I'm very grateful that I have that.
No, that's awesome, and I appreciate you sharing that. At this point, I want to be able to give you a chance to share some words of wisdom as we get ready to close out to that young person, especially the person of color who may be thinking or considering a role in politics or even as a public service. What advice would you give to that young person?
Listen, this is an honorable profession. I will say that. I've met some of the best people in the world, and obviously there's been some challenges, some folk but in every profession. But if you come in and not for self-aggrandizement, and you want to serve people every morning getting up, there's only 33 senators in the state of Ohio. There are 9 senators in my caucus. And the opportunity to serve almost 12 million people is a great opportunity. Now, it's going to be challenging. But I will say to young people, no matter where you are, and I see them every day. There are 2 young people that outside of my camera right now. They're graduates of The Ohio State University. I see young people daily that are doing magnificent things in their lives. Whether it's in science, in medicine, education, geology, all kinds of things. Ministry, some incredible young people. And I say to them, follow your dream. Don't let anybody define you. Only God can do that. There's a journey. My journey was a long one. It was 40 years before I ever got elected to office. But don't let anybody deter you. You're not just defined by your circumstances and that little block that you live in. Because if no sociologist or psychologist would say that I would be in the Senate. He's from the wrong side of town. He's from the wrong side of the tracks. But thanks be to God, my mother and her faith and those around me encouraged me so much that I was not defined by my circumstances. And so that's what I would leave with them. Take charge. And when you talked about relationships, your good friends are not going to want you to be in trouble. Your good friends are not going to want you to drug yourself out. Your good friends, when you see your friends struggling with alcohol abuse or substance abuse are going to try to help you and take you to a place that you can get help. So I'm saying to them, you've got a great future. Folk are on, if they're walking on the moon, there's ought to be things that we can do right here on earth to make a difference in how we live it. And so let's get about the business and let's get our work done.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Senator Craig, thank you for taking the time. I know you're a busy man, but thank you for pausing and giving us your time and joining us here at the leadership table. I want to personally say thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your passion for wanting to see our community be better. And thank you for being a watchman on the wall. You know, as the scripture says, you don't want everybody up there. Not everybody could be up there, but thank you for being up on the wall. And to all of those who are watching, again, you can click on the links, be able to subscribe, be able to learn more about what's going on in our state, and to remember to always continue to serve, always continue to walk with love, and to remember that there always is room for you at the table. I'm Dr. Harrison. Until the next time, keep the faith. We'll see you soon.
Boxland Media. Think big.